can post the link in chat as well if you'd like, but I posted it in the YouTube chat. And then here it is in our chat as well.
Okay. I'm going to just do that and then send it to my friends. And then we need to get this party started. Okay. We ready?
We are recording, so whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Really? Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Patrick Dooley. I am the artistic director of the Shotgun Players. I use he, him pronouns. And I'd like to, at long last, welcome you to the second installment of our new program, Let's Talk About Theater. You can see that we still haven't worked out Zoom yet after 18 months. So it's really better for us to not focus on this and get back to doing plays, which is what we're really good at. For the last 18 months, most theaters have only been talking about COVID protocols, our funding shortfalls, restructuring scenarios, et cetera. So as we're beginning to emerge from this challenging, uncertain time, I was really eager to get together with folks to talk about live theater again and all the stories that excite us. And as it turns out, of the 11 shows that we're producing for our 30th anniversary season, all of the writers, composers, devisers who created these plays are still alive and creating work. So I thought it'd be fun to, over the next few months, get them together and have some of these conversations. For anybody who's watching this, who's still with us, you can, introduce yourself on the chat. And if we have some time at the end, we'll be able to answer questions. So you're welcome to drop those in the chat and we'll try to get to them as we can. One of the things that we started doing in the last few years is doing a land acknowledgement before all of our performances and events. While my Bay Area home and the land of the Aspen stage is on Huichin, the unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Lishan, today I'm coming to you from where I grew up in Pungo, Virginia, which is also known as the unceded land of the Chesapeakean or Chesapeake tribe. We do land acknowledgements before all of our events because as a theater company whose purpose it is to tell stories that inspire us to reimagine our lives and the world around us, we believe it's important to start with the fact that the land we occupy was once taken by force. It's part of our shared context. If you are listening and you'd like to learn more about this and support the work of the Native communities where you live, you can type in your browser native-land.ca right there into your browser, and then just follow the directions, and it will tell you.
This year.
So some folks we have to mute some folks. Sorry, we love you. You have to be muted while I'm talking. Not yet. We at Shotgun Players are involved with a group called the Segurite Land Trust. They're an organization led by urban Indigenous women who are working to rematriate the land in the Bay Area. All righty, so let's talk about theater. Today, I'm joined by two of my favorite all-time theater makers. And I don't even say Bay Area theater makers, I just say theater makers. Beth Wilmurt and Jake Rodriguez. They are the creators and visionaries behind the Cassandra Sessions, Recording This World. It's a live theater piece that we'll be producing this December. And it's inspired by the songs of a legendary Bay Area folk musician, Malvina Reynolds. And I could probably spend the next hour just kind of going over the bios of Beth and Jake, but I won't do that because I want to talk to them about the show. But I will say a few other things. I know they both came out of the SF State and did a lot of collaborations with each other. They've been collaborating together for a long time. And I know they did a lot of collaborations with Art Street Theater back in the heyday when the Exit Theater and 450 Geary were they're still going. Well, Exit Theater is still going, but when they were doing a lot of really exciting work. The first time I ever worked with Jake Rodriguez was in 1999 with the production of Carol Churchill's Skriker that we did at some warehouse somewhere, I'm not sure where it is, somewhere in San Francisco. And then the first time I worked with them together in a partnership with our 2003-04 production of The Death of Meyerhold that many of you might remember. Beth and Jake have both been making really innovative, award-winning, super awesome theater, pretty much nonstop all over the Bay Area. And while they're also pursuing tracks as musicians, Beth has been, has led, a dozen choirs or more with a lot of groups here in the Bay. and has worked as an actor, done, I don't even know how many plays with Shotgun and lots of other plays in the Bay Area. And Jake is an all-around soundologist, which is a work that I just kind of typed up and it didn't come up in spell check. So I guess it's a real word now. And I know that he's done radio shows. I know he dabbled in doing some software technology for sound. He's been in a bunch of bands. And I think it's almost easier to say the names of the theater companies where he hasn't worked, because he's worked in just about every theater company that pays, and even some that don't pay up here in the Bay Area. Anyway, with that, without saying any more than that, I'd love to turn over the Zoom mics to Beth and Jake and give them a chance to introduce themselves before we start our conversation. Beth, do you want to jump in first?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there and joining us. Yes, my name is Beth Wilmurt, she, her, hers, and I'm calling in from San Francisco, so it's the Ohlone Ramai Tush. And yeah, I'm just delighted that we get to develop the show and that I get to do it with Shotgun and with Jake, and excited to kind of chat about that. And yeah, I'll pass it over to Jake to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jake Rodriguez. I am not muted now. Okay, cool. Great. He, him, his are my pronouns. I'm in Richmond, California right now on the native land of the Muwekma Ohlone tribe. I'm stoked to be here to chat. I've known both of you for a long time, so
yeah. Oh my gosh, so y'all are kind of like a dream team for this. So I love, Beth, I first heard about this project. I know you were at one point talking about it was going to be something you were going to develop with the ground floor at Berkeley Rep. Whoa, holy crap, there's my wife calling me. Okay. Oh, okay. I don't know how to turn off that, folks. Okay, anyway, this is live theater conversations about theater. I would love to, and then COVID happened and you weren't able to do it there. And so we started talking, and the idea to kind of do it at Shotgun came up. So I'd love to hear you just talk about the genesis of the piece, getting Jake involved and the work that y'all have done, so.
Sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and take it back 20 years when I got a job at the Community Music Center in San Francisco, and I became the children's choir director. And I was new to that job. I had been doing mainly theater, but I had a passion for music, and I just kind of landed this sweet job that I have been learning on the job for the last 20 years. But I inherited a huge file cabinet full of sheet music. So, and I found some books, maybe two song books by Melvina Reynolds, and I hadn't heard of her. And I just started kind of flipping through the books, and then I found out she was local, and then I started to know a few people who knew her daughter and had worked with her daughter, and the songs were kind of grabbed my attention. Her lyrics kind of grabbed me, and over the last 20 years, I've done a handful of her songs with the children's choir, and yeah, just really every time I pulled out a song, it would always seem a little bit strange, and then the kids would absolutely love it. So I just kind of, kept track of that, kind of a little off, a little weird, a little unusual, from the past, but the kids who usually wanted to do Disney songs were kind of getting into it. So, and then fast forward 15 years later, I started doing choirs for adults, older adults, and I've been a part of it was a study on aging and singing, and Community Music Center has now been supporting choirs, older adult choirs at several senior centers all across San Francisco, and I do 4 of them. And so I see over 100 older adults a week. Right now we're singing on Zoom. But anyway, I was looking for kind of what's so wonderful and so interesting about Melvina is she started her whole career late in life. So around 50 years old, she had already had 2 degrees from Cal Berkeley, but she went back and got another degree. So she, in music, and she just, it was the beginning of the folk revival, 60s folk revival, and she threw herself in the ring and she started writing songs, and she was great. And Pete Seeger you know, they befriended each other, and he recorded some of her songs and several people. And but I really thought she was a great inspiration for my older adults and for myself. Spending so much time with older adults, I've been thinking a lot about kind of the second half of life and how I want to live it, and trying to take some cues from my students. So they had heard of Melvina, they knew some of the songs, and I just started saying, hey, let's work on a piece together. So originally this piece was going to be a intergenerational choir project where we did Malvina Reynolds, and she did a lot of children's music, or what she called children's music, and music for adults. But in all honesty, her children's music felt very adult, and her adult music felt very like playful and childlike. So I think it's been all fair game for me, for anybody to sing it. So that's kind of where it started. And then parallel, you know, Jake I always think of Jake for anything that comes up for me, but I've been thinking about Cassandra. Oh, Nancy Schimmel. She should tell you about Melvina. So Nancy's here, and it's Melvina's daughter. Hi, Nancy. Oh my gosh. I just lost my train of thought because Nancy showed up. But
I just got to say, I'm going to interrupt you right now, Beth.
Yeah.
I've been on stage with you a bunch of times, and you always know who's in the audience. You're always watching the audience members, and you're doing that right now on Zoom too. You're watching the whole audience.
Oh, Joni, Jackie, Carol's here. Well, Nancy, I was just talking about your mom, and you know this, and then I was just saying a few things about your mom, and how I found a song book in my file cabinet when I first took over the choir from Candy Forest. But that's how I learned her songs about 20 years ago, or started flipping through the book. But then there was this Cassandra kind of other project in my head that I wanted to maybe do a sound piece. Hi, Nancy. I wanted to do a sound piece with Jake based on Cassandra, but I never knew what the content was. So Cassandra was her curse was that she would speak the truth, but no one would ever believe her. That was her curse. And so, you know, this also goes about back 15 years, and I could never figure out what would be the content of the Cassandra piece. Like, would I make it about environmental issues? You know, what social justice? Like, I just couldn't kind of land on anything. Like, what was I going to say? What was I going to write? And I really wanted to do this with Jake, and I thought it could be a good sound piece, you know, a good sound project. So these two things were going together, and then one little tidbit of information, one little tidbit kind of helped me bring them together. But Melvina was with Capitol Records for a couple of her albums. Nancy's going to be my fact checker. Here she comes. And then she left Capitol Records and started her own label, which was called Cassandra Records. Now, I've never officially asked Nancy if Cassandra was Greek Cassandra, but I kind of assumed, of course, it was Greek Cassandra. You know, so all of a sudden I had this idea that I would play Cassandra, and Cassandra would be recording music, and I would do it with Jake, because Jake and I work on these kind of projects, or are drawn to these kind of things. And we would record Melvina Reynolds songs, and we would maybe have some sort of interaction as recording artist and engineer, and we started developing that. We've started developing that. Woo!
Well, talk to me about what y'all are working, like, you know, Jake, I'd love to kind of hear about, like, what are y'all doing in the collateral process? How have you found a way to, like, an entry point for yourself in this process?
Well, you know, Beth got in touch with me about this a couple of years ago, I think, initially, with just a sort of seed of the idea. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. Whenever we have time, whenever we can figure it out, you know. And then, of course, we were gifted with a lot of time suddenly. So when she came to me again, you know, sometime, I don't know if it was like early in last year after lockdown, and she said, hey, you know, that Cassandra project, that Melvina Reynolds project, we may get a little bit of a go-ahead from Shotgun. So I don't know if you're interested in doing that or working on that right now, if you have time, if it seems fun, if it doesn't seem fun, I don't know. And I was like, yeah, of course. I've worked with Beth for so long, and we always have fun. It's
Mhm.
always a big puzzle to unravel.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this meeting on Zoom about weekly for months now, and it's evolved from meeting only on Zoom to then being able to meet in person, but distanced with masks, and now we can actually meet actually in person and be near each other, which is pretty remarkable. So we've had that sort of process where it was a lot of talking and a lot of like sharing files with each other for a while,
Yeah.
and then now we're actually able to sort of be in the same room and work on some stuff physically, which is really the key.
I got to say, it was really exciting for me when I came into the theater. I guess it was like the last week when I stopped by and just kind of just was walked through, walked down the hallway, the dark hallway, and heard actors singing and talking to each other and on the stage again. I just got it was sort of an emotional moment for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's happening again. And you also like what you're doing with your music is so beautiful and textured. And there's so much the way that you're coordinating with Jake, with your mixing and how run the sound through the machines that you run the sound through, and Beth's voice. There's just really something special happening there. At one point, y'all had talked about Jake being a character in this story. And I don't know if there's anything about this sort of the narrative arc or maybe narrative arc is not the right way to describe your process or your story, but like how y'all are interacting with each other as performers in space.
Yeah, I think it's kind of Beckettian or an existential kind of scenario that we're setting up. And so there's some atmosphere, some maybe things going on outside. And so we're trying to set up a situation where we can have an interaction and respond to maybe some stresses on the outside of the world, and then kind of dealing with the technology of what it means to record something. And so we're trying to set up as many kind of situations or scenarios that we can kind of interact, but to a purpose. Like if it helps add a theme or not just talking for talking's sake, but like using the kind of metaphor of the recording studio to its fullest. I don't know
Yeah,
what you think about our
I
relationship
think
that we're developing.
I think the premise of what we're doing is really simple, and it's that we're recording these songs, and I'm sort of on the technical side, and Beth is the performer. Um, and I think that premise, we sort of stick to that premise, and then some themes crop up from that. I think a lot of what Beth and I have worked on over the years has been about process. And so we're sort of digging into process and the successes and the failures and the challenges of trying to do something, trying to create something, trying to communicate with another person.
Yeah.
It's pretty task based. Like we're actually trying to make nice versions of the songs, interesting versions of the songs. Like we're actually attempting with maybe some limitations. Like right now, I'm the main musician. Although for the piece, we might be pulling in a few other people for if I just can't stand. If I feel like I'm hitting a wall with how I want it to sound, and I have a sound in my head and I need a better musician to do that. But the pandemic has actually provided a lot of obstacle that I've really enjoyed. It's like, oh, okay, I guess it's just me right now, and I'm going to have to work really hard to make this sound good. And I like task-based things. I like process-oriented things. And I think that's a little bit, I think Jake and I share uh, those values of like everything's process oriented and they're longer lines, and the performance is just a window into a process. you know
There was at one point in our earlier discussions that I sat in on, y'all had talked about, Jake maybe having some sort of like a Zeus persona, to kind of tag in with the Cassandra. Is that an idea that has sort of drifted?
Yeah, it has a little bit. I mean, we haven't really, I mean, yes, we're naming me, but we haven't been really overt about Cassandra. It's kind of just in the soup. And we're going to need to kind of track things. What do we want the audience to understand? What are we okay with them not understanding or knowing to tell our story? And so far, I mean, we're 6 months out, but so far, we haven't needed to make Jake's character anything more than the recording artist. But he is, we do have the male female dynamic, I guess, or that's obvious, that it might be obvious. um, and she, what do I want to say? I guess we can play with that a little bit, or kind of power dynamics,
Mhm.
but we haven't we haven't gotten really literal with his character and barely literal with mine beyond kind of saying I'm Cassandra.
Something about the sound, the person in the booth who is in some sort of a gatekeeper for how the sound gets to the world, how the filter or a way that the sound gets to the world, which is an interesting just frame to think about the songs and to think about your character and what and the power, like the power dynamics, like you said.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, something we've been sort of investigating is the idea of how limiting being in a recording session can be to music, which is just such a live, buoyant medium. And sometimes you're in a recording session and you're under the gun, or you're feeling the pressure of the folks that are waiting for you to get your part right, and it kind of gets in the way. Um, and I mean, we've been looking at lots of different documentaries about bands in the studio, and including the Malvina Reynolds documentary with her footage from her in the studio. Um, and that sort of, there's a frustration that pops up constantly with musicians, especially musicians that are the live performance is really their wheelhouse. The studio can be kind of constraining. So that's one aspect that we're investigating, I think.
Yeah. Beth, and Jake, I'm kind of curious if you think this, if there's anything you feel like that comes up for you in these lyrics of Malvina's songs and her lyrics of these songs that feels like it's kind of come back around to something that feels particular, that resonates maybe in a different way, or is how are those songs resonating for you now? I mean, they obviously came out of a particular moment in time, right? But when I hear you sing those songs, I think about, I feel like we're in the midst of another break. I mean, the pandemic, a lot of the sort of the racial justice things that are happening, a lot of the economic justice things that are happening, that I feel like we're in another sort of radical cultural shift that was also happening in the 60s. And I'm curious if you've been, if you're hearing any of that in the songs, if you're like, wow, that feels really prescient to this moment. I don't know. I'm just kind of,
Yeah, I mean, her whole entire body of work is really resonating, I think, for me right now. Some songs maybe point to a particular moment in time with fully sketched with details and a particular moment. And I guess technically we're not doing as many of those. We're doing more universal kind of more open songs, but those resonate equally. Just change out the dates, change out the information, and some of the stories are the same. But I think a lot of the music come from the kind of the civil rights movement and stuff. It is resonating for a lot of people right now. So that feels kind of like an easy yes, like yes, yes, definitely. Songs resonate. But definitely as I try on these songs which is what I feel like I'm doing. I'm trying to get to know a person, Melvina, get to know her body of work and get to know what she was all about, not necessarily by just talking to Nancy or reading an article, but like actually trying on the songs. So to your point, like these songs, the more I wear them and carry them around with me, and the more they kind of bounce around. Anything from a song called "Don't Push Me." The one thing, or there's just so many little snippets that just stick with me. That I mean, and what I like about her songs is they seem very direct, just really direct. And so to try them on feels really potent and strong. I feel strong singing them, and I think that's kind of a little bit what I'm trying to do through the piece is I'm trying to kind of find my own voice and the phrases just resonate left and right. The don't push, I don't know why don't push me came to me, and I don't even know if we're going to use it in the show, but you know I mean, a song that's called Don't Push Me, and the main thing is, that's the main, she just keeps coming back. Don't push me. I'm I'm headed my way. Don't block my highway. Don't push me. Don't shove me. I'm walking softly, so get off me. Don't push me. I mean, it's just so like, try singing that. You're going to feel really empowered.
Yeah. Well, I
I,
gotta tell you, and that's something I've talked to you, Beth, about your. I mean, actually, frankly, I mean, having worked with y'all both over the last 20 years, something that really strikes me both about you is how much like integrity and authenticity that y'all bring to your work and your conversations about the work. I know that sounds sort of trite to say, but a lot of times when we think of performers, you know, a lot of what really strikes me about your acting is while you're very specific physically, and you know how to sing and dance and do all the, and you know how to do all that, performance art stuff. There's always something so authentic and direct and unencumbered about your acting that I had to think about, like, wow, how would I describe this? And that resonates for me about when you speak about Malvina's lyrics. There's a sort of a simplicity and a directness to them that is refreshing. I think we forget. I think folks forget about, we often dress our stuff up, dress truths up too much because we're trying to make them palatable, or we're trying to feel good about what we're saying. And there's something refreshing and really just amazing about work and communication that is so unadorned and direct.
Melvina has another song called I Don't Mind Failing in This World.
Mm.
And I think Jake and I connect, I think, on this too. And maybe I'll have Jake, that the power of the failure and being in the failure. And we know that that's the key to success is embracing the failures. We get that. We're looking for the happy accidents. We're grabbing onto those failures and turning them into something. Um,
Yeah, Beth put together, before I was even really involved in this, Beth put together a series of demos of more songs than we'll even use in the show, I think, that she just recorded at home on her little 4-track phone app. Yeah. And they're great. They're totally great. And it was a great sort of kickoff place for us. And some of the work that we've been doing based on those arrangements that she made on her phone, when we get together, we've been sort of doing recording sessions, like taking those tracks, laying them out, doing a little recording session and discovering what sort of dynamics pop up between us, where there's times where I get a little too chatty and then we get distracted, or she gets a little frustrated about singing a certain part and we do it again. I get very businesslike over trying to source out a hum in the room, and we'll have these real moments like that, and then we'll kind of like step outside and go, okay, so that moment, that was kind of fun. Yeah, that where you were looking for the hum was kind of fun there. And when I couldn't get the part right and I said something on the recording tape and then it was like looped back at us every time we did the take, things like that we've been discovering, and we keep it kind of loose and natural like that. And I think the piece is ultimately going to feature that kind of loose and natural banter between us, scripted, but based on our sort of real discoveries of the process that we're on right now making this piece.
Jake, while you're just listening to you say that, it's making me wonder, like I've spent a lot of time talking with actors about their process and how they find their way into the work that they're going to do and how they're going to interpret the role that they're playing. And I'm curious how you approach a script, how you approach a process. I'm sure it's different because you're working with different organizations with different budgets and different, their different needs. But are there some like bread and butter things that you bring with you? Like, this is what I bring. this is part of like a process that works, that it gives you a gateway into how to design for a piece.
Well, it's really different because in this piece, I'm sort of in it too, and I'm
Yeah.
a performer, and I'm not usually, for folks that don't know me.
You are a good performer. I mean, I just got to say that. Yeah.
Well, I started as a performer. I acted with Beth before I really did sound design. But then I've been doing sound design almost exclusively with the rare things that Beth wrote.
When you work with Beth, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So approaching a process like this is really, really different for me than I would like say go into a show at ACT. Yeah. Yeah, where I'm just the sound designer on the show. I really approach that a different way. This, to me, this is like, I grew up acting. I first started in theater in the Bay Area as an actor with Beth and Mark Jackson and Art Street Theater and Kevin Clark. This is sort of, it's a different sort of home for me, you know? And I sort of investigate a piece a little bit differently than I would if I was just approaching it with sound. If I'm doing sound design on a show, I'll take the script, I'll read through it. I might read through it out loud because it just seems to go faster that way. And I'll just mark it all the way through it where I think there may be sound, any place that I think there might be sound. And then I'll meet with the director and we'll sort of go over what we each think. Sometimes the director will want to have done that themselves. They'll go, these are the sounds that are in the show and they're going to be there. Sometimes the director wants me to tell them everything, you know, these are the sounds that I think can be in the show. So it's kind of like. Do
you have a preference?
I love to be in the creative process. That's my favorite thing is to like create. And so if I have somebody I love to have a director that responds to stuff that I bring and says, not that, but that's really cool. I don't love being prescribed to, but I can find my way into anything. So it all depends. Sometimes the playwright is prescribing the sound, very much so. Sometimes the sound is totally written into the script, like completely, you know?
I mean, something I've experienced since I was introduced to you as a sound designer, and frankly, and also Matt Steins, somebody I know who worked with you, and
brilliant designer,
a great designer, is having the sound designer in the room while you're creating a piece. And frankly, that's something that Mark introduced to us, is the concept of having Mark Jackson's a fellow company member, Art Street Theater, you know, co-founder with Beth, Mark, and Beth and Jake, and because the sound, having that person creating the sound with the actors in the room and then playing the sound, you know, just like scoring the moment, and almost like it's dialogue or text or hard. So the actors typically often don't sometimes hear the sound until they're in tech, and in the old school way. And in the new school way, we're getting an opportunity to be introduced to the sound design character and the sound design influence earlier in the process. And I have to say, like, once we started doing that, it's really hard to go back from that. Once you get that, now, of course, that means that that's a larger commitment for the sound designer. It's a bigger deal. It means that they're not able to do work for other folks if they're in your studio all the time. Yeah. But you know, it's definitely, I think it's been an investment that's worth it for us to make as theater makers, to have the sound designers more integral to the.
And any of the designers, really. I mean, have everybody who's creating the piece be in the room would be great. If we could all do that all together all the time, then we'd be like amazing comrades, right?
That's and I often, like, lights are the light designers are the ones that I feel like they're the ones that get nothing, because they don't really get to start doing anything until tech.
In the dark.
And they're like, hurry, make your lights. Everybody, costumes have had a running start. You know, lights don't really get a chance to start showing their work until last.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, that impulse came from acting in shows. So as far as I was concerned, like, you know, you're in rehearsal because you're in the show. And then when I sort of transitioned from being an actor to a sound designer, it was kind of like, well, I only know how to do it if I'm in rehearsal. That's when you make the show, you know? So it was just kind of that way for me.
Wow. we had a question drop in from somebody that I wanted to just kind of throw out there. Somebody wants to know if Nancy was, in on the recording sessions at all, and if so, and if she has had a reaction to this process and this piece that you're creating. And I know that y'all have spoken to each other. And Nancy, I know you weren't expecting to have to participate here. We're honored and thrilled that you're here. But somebody's kind of curious, like, Nancy's here. What does she think about all of this? I don't know if you want to join. If not, I know Beth could probably speak.
Nancy knows very little, and I don't know if she's mad at me for not sharing anything, or if she's just like, Beth, you go do your thing, and I'll catch up with you.
Opening night, yeah.
But I've been really excited. Like lots of times I'll do a recording and I'll imagine Nancy hearing it, or I'll imagine Nancy, seeing the show, and I get kind of excited. But I haven't wanted to bombard her. I think we kind of talked a little bit, like, we've had some talks about her mom, which has been really great, but I haven't shared any of my demos with her because I'm not ready yet.
That's great. Yeah, I did too many. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to unmute for a minute and just say I really trust Beth. I've seen her do, musical performances, and I've seen her act, and I'm ready to watch this thing and have it be wonderful.
I'm kind of the same way. When Beth comes to me, she says, I have an idea. I'm like, okay, great. When are we going to do it? Let's do that idea. I have like, it's like a blank check of trust. I wanted to, to shift. This will be one of the first things that we do in this sort of post-COVID, or not even post-COVID, in this post-shutdown, I guess I should say, thing. And there's been a lot of talk in the theater community, but a lot of things. What we're hoping that where people are trying to not say, I can't wait to get back to theater. We're trying, because nobody wants to go back to the way that we were doing things or get back to the old ways. And I'm wondering if y'all, this piece aside, just your work as theater makers, if you have any particular hopes for what this next era of theater making will be. Not just for the Bay Area, but for the country, for the world. Like, what are in your own personal careers, like, what are your own thoughts about where we might go as a theater making community?
I mean, you kind of posed this question earlier, so I've been thinking about it, and I don't have any preconceived ideas, but I just I want just more, a lot. I just want more people making more art, and I gravitate towards small things, little conversations. What we're doing right now, it's kind of fun to just have a few people on a Zoom call and get to kind of do this. So when I imagine the future, I imagine just more people getting involved and people making a lot of small things, maybe, that would be like one thing that I have imagined a little bit. And I don't want, it doesn't need to be, like, for me as an audience member, it doesn't need to be any particular thing. My feeling is like, surprise me. What have you got? It's like, if someone's gonna make dinner for me, I'd be like, yeah, surprise me. So I just want more, a lot, and I want to be surprised. And I have no, nothing, prescriptive, yeah. That's what I thought when you said that question.
Jake, what about you? Any thoughts about that?
I mean, I'm enjoying this process of creating this thing with Beth and the sort of lab that you've given us, Patrick. I would love to continue working on things like this, where we're really just able to develop it over a time. I mean, one thing that just working in the grind of the American regional theater system, and it's like the amount of time that you're given to investigate a play and then get it up on its feet, and then you're in front of audiences, and then it's not in front of audiences. Yeah. It just feels like such a, I don't know, it's like that old Monty Python thing where the people are on the conveyor belt and they're getting chopped up and turned into slurry.
Yeah,
I'm super not interested in trying to perpetuate that grind. It's I did a production of Top Girls at ACT a couple of years ago, and I love Carol Churchill. We did Skriker. You introduced Carol Churchill to me through our Skriker, and she's one of my favorite playwrights. I'd never worked on Top Girls or even read it, and I got to work on a production with Tamala Woodard directing at ACT, and I loved being able to work on the show, and I felt like I barely cracked it when by the time it was open. Like I was just starting to see what the piece could be by the time the show opened. And that's no fault of ACT or of the director by any means. I loved our production, but it's just the process that that we've created or the timeline that we create these seasons where there's just not enough time to really get involved. So that's one thing I'd love to see, is just a longer, more thoughtful process to develop new work in particular, or even old work. Because for me, Top Girls was brand new. It was like the first time I was seeing these words, and I thought like, oh, you need like 3 years to really understand the beginnings of this play, And so,
we're talking a lot about like just trying to do less better. And it's, and one of there are a lot of tragedies that have come from this shutdown, not to mention, but one of the blessings of this shutdown is I feel like the planet was just saying, you have to fucking stop. Everybody has to stop. You're going too fast. Nobody's thinking. You're just racing. We're just going full speed ahead, and we're going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And technology is just like pouring gasoline on the fire and making it go faster, and we didn't even know how fast we were going, because we were just doing it, but I think all of us were feeling it in our bodies, just that like the constant like and that's just not a place to be creative. You can't be creative when you're in that space. You can't be thoughtful when you're in that space. And we've been talking a lot around the office, on Zoom, and in the brief moments we've been able to be together, trying to swear to each other that we won't get back on that conveyor belt, that we won't get back on that crazy combine. Like, don't let that happen. We all have to like sort of hold each other accountable and not let the crazy start again. And it is very challenging because we're caught up in these financial structures of the next and the next and the next and the next, and the subscription model and all the things that we have to do. And it's very hard to, and living in the Bay Area is bonkers, for artists. And so it's already feels almost unsustainable. But I am right there with you on, let's move slower and be more thoughtful. I feel like I spent so much more time thinking about plays in the early 90s when I was first starting this theater company than now. And we can't compromise our humanity at the expense of this. And so I'm saying that out there, like I don't have the solutions except for Detroit. We have 5 plays as far as our subscription series next year instead of 6. So we're like, okay, we're gonna do one less show, and we're going to put more resources into those 5 shows, and we're trying to and add more time. If we had extra money, if we get a grant, if somebody gives us a donation, we add more rehearsal hours. Let's just put it in rehearsal hours. Let's add more time to the process. So that, because, all of our artists are also working another job, and I just saw, your son come talk to you, Jake. We've also got families and other things that we're doing at the same time. Like, how can we still be human beings and also put in the thoughtful work that our audiences really demand or expect or hope for, dream of when they come there? They want to see work that has been fully realized by people that have been able to put their hearts and souls into it. So, I am right there with y'all on that hope for our future, and a more humane, the notion of the starving artist is it's actually not romantic at all. It's really just terrible, And so we're really just trying to how do we smash that notion? I know we're kind of like getting ready to run out of time here. I'm curious if there's anybody out there, if y'all have any questions. Beth and Jake, is there anything that y'all are kind of like thinking about that you weren't ruminating on? Nancy, anything you'd like to, while you're here? I want to say one last thing just about Beth.
Uh-oh.
No, this is great. But this is kind of just tags onto something you said before, and I think about this all the time. Well, there's two things that I've heard from you that I think that something that Beth said and something that Jake said that I think about all the time when I think about you both. And these are stories that I've heard you say a long time ago, or anecdotes that are still with me. And the thing about Beth is that you love to rehearse. Like can we just rehearse and do fewer performances and just more of the being in the creative space for you is really where your heart is. And I think about that because a lot of actors, they just want to get up on that stage and they just want to go and get in front of people. And what really makes your heart sing is to be in that room, like the stuff that you and Jake are doing. That's where your juices are really going. Not that you're not thrilled to be in front of people and your adrenaline goes and you can turn it on, but that you really, the creative process is your home. It's a home for you. And there's something that Jake said to me, and it really struck me also, just that you're like how important it is for you to be able to put your own creative like heart into a piece. And I remember you saying like sometimes like somebody like hands me a bunch of things like, okay, just take these sounds and cut them together. These are all the sounds. These are all the things. Just make a soundtrack out of this. That you're just like, ugh. And some people are like, great, this is gonna be so easy. It's gonna be awesome. I know exactly what to do. Boom, boom, boom. Give me my check. See you. And right. that is like the opposite of joy for you. That you really are like, I want to find a way to create. I want a sound design that's going to make me have to think of making sound in a way that I've never made before, with stuff that I've never used before to make the sound happen. And
ideally, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I just that really, and that's a story. You remember you telling me that, and I thought of that. Just it's stuck in my mind as a defining quality for you. That like I really want to make sure if we bring Jake in for a show, he's got to make crazy sound out of like rusty cans getting dragged along the sidewalk very slowly while a hummingbird is flapping its wings close by or something.
Very good. You're prescribing though.
Yeah. Exactly. I want to feel like the pain of my Anyway, y'all, thank you for doing this. And for those of you who are still with us, thank you for sticking it out with us through our technical difficulties. We can't wait. We're going to be doing a show live at the Ashby Stage. We're doing a play by Diana O called My Hate Letter to the Great American Theater. This is a person who was super inspired by Taylor Mack. And so it's going to be a huge, beautiful extravaganza of music and dancing and just irreverence. And then we're going to be doing, we're doing a play called The Claim, which was scheduled to be as part of our season in 2020. And then we did a little radio version of it, and that will be live at our theater. And then we'll be doing the Cassandra Sessions. That'll be happening there. And so I look forward to seeing y'all there. For those of you who don't know, we've got Sassafras coming up for us, which is happening on it's our birthday, and it'll be July 10th. And if you would like to help us making a contribution for that, we'd really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please come back on July 8th, which is actually our technical birthday. It's the anniversary of the first show that we ever opened back in 1992. And I'll be here with Dave Malloy, who did composed Beardo and Beowulf and a bunch of other shows that we did. And he also was the composer for Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812. And we'll be producing that as part of our 30th anniversary season. And he and I and Aaron Mailing Stewart will be talking about that show here on July 8th. And I'm getting a tag here. You can hear about our other podcast interviews on the link that was just dropped into the chat. We have a podcast that you can find. I think it's like on Apple iTunes. And I don't know what the podcast is called, but you can, if you just type in Shotgun Players, you'll find it. All right. I think that's it. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, in the booth for helping us out with this. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Nancy.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Bye,
Beth.
everybody.
See ya.
Au revoir.
Bonsoir.
No, anyway, it's all.